Hi folks, we're here at the home of Ruth and Phil Brug at 400 South Joanne, corner of Preble and South Joanne Avenue. And we're doing a This Is Your Life Ruth and Phil Brug video for all the future generation Brugs and Koenigs to know the Brug family history a little bit. So for Alex and Lauren and Lucy and Roger and Jane and Emily and whoever else might come in the future, we wanted you to know a little bit about my grandparents and your great-grandparents, because they're pretty special people. So we're gonna do a little bit of family history here just so we preserve it for the ages. And let's go get them. Let's go talk to them. We're gonna go around Ventura, talk about their life back in Montana and Wyoming, and let Ruth and Phil take over from here. So let's go knock on their door. Come on! Here, Grandpa, now.
Ruth,
Hey, Grandpa.
glad to see you.
We got you on tape already, so say hi to the folks out there in TV land.
What's up? How are you?
Hi, Phil. How are you doing? All right. Good to see you this morning. Did you just have a big waffle breakfast?
Well, no.
Not this morning?
For some reason,
Grandma's lagging today. You didn't get your special waffle breakfast.
Where is that, Grandma?
This is Grandma's living room and dining room.
She's in the midst of it.
Grandma's hiding. I guess she's primping your hair.
She's not in there?
But she's not
This is where she usually is.
Yep.
Her beautiful kitchen.
Grandma's kitchen with many waffle breakfasts. Uh-oh, Grandma.
Got a lot of family photos
You better hurry
in here.
up, Grandma.
So would you please get that dish pan off the table? I just got through.
What? There she is! Hey, Ruth! All right.
Grandma's still in her.
We're waiting for you out here. We're going to shut the camera off.
When I'm in my nightgown.
And you're looking gorgeous.
Okay, well, we'll let you
Beautiful.
get dressed.
All righty. 2. Hi, everybody. All right.
Hi there.
Ruth is dressed now. We're ready for the day. And today
You can say I'm always late.
we're going to do a history of the Brug and Zing family so that we can get an understanding of how all of these people came about, the Brug legacy.
Brug legacy.
But it's a rather long trek to understand how all of that came about. So we're going to give it a good start.
No
So
more.
first of all, Phil, you are from Russia originally.
Russia. I was born in Russia.
What year?
I was born in Russia in 1909. That's a long time.
That's a
You're starting to get up there, Grandpa.
I'm getting up there.
His birthday's coming.
Well, let's show on the map where you
Let
were
me get
born
the map.
in general, and then...
That's what I was trying to find.
Okay.
You,
Don't
if
forget
you find the village,
Phil, everything's being recorded.
That's right. You got to watch your language, Grandpa.
Watch
We
your
want this a
English.
family tape.
Okay,
It's being recorded.
where did your family come from, Phil? From Germany
they
originally?
came from Germany. They didn't show them here. That's where
Germany's here.
where they came from to America, and where it spent about 100 years of their life was right in here.
It's the Volga
you see
region
my
of
finger?
Russia, right?
West of
Volga
the
region, west of Volga.
West of the Volga
on the
River.
Baltic side, they call it, in German they call it Baltic, mountainous side. Mountainous and the other is plains.
This is the Volga
Neither
River.
side, that's the plain.
The Volga River right in here.
Right in there, just along in there.
Yeah.
Just keep your finger on the Volga.
Okay, and they were farmers in
Farmer.
that region?
Not entirely, no, that they were not entirely. No, they had shops and so forth and so on.
And then they emigrated to America up through here.
They went north. That's right.
They went north and out.
Toward
Out the Baltic
England
Sea.
and France. England and France are out in this region up here.
And that was in 1912?
In 1912, and
So-
then that was towards the end.
So you were
Most of them had migrated around 1901, 2.
Yeah. So you were 3 years old when you emigrated from Russia?
Three and a half.
3.5 to 4. Wow.
How many children were there in your family when they emigrated to America?
Well, there were 6 of them directly in our family. And they were all boys but one, and that was a girl.
Wow.
Everybody survived the trip,
And
okay?
they survived the trip, fine shape.
Mhm.
And At that time there were Johnny and Tolly. There were only two in John's family.
John is your older brother, explain.
He had already married when he was in Russia and
Oh,
brought
yeah.
his family over also.
They traveled together, you know.
So how many brothers did you have? You had Johnny.
6 brothers and 1 sister.
Johnny was the oldest.
Johnny was not a brother.
Oh.
He was a
Nephew.
nephew.
So your oldest brother was Fred?
John.
John. Okay.
The next oldest was Henry.
Henry.
Then my sister Christina. She was the
Christina.
next oldest.
Okay.
And then came Fred.
Then Fred.
Then myself,
Okay.
Pete, and Alf.
Okay, so you were the third youngest out of 7.
I was in the lower, in the younger group.
Pete and Alex, okay.
And you emigrated in 1912 to America.
To America.
1912.
That's right. And we ended
Why?
up in Montana, and Uncle Peter Lenz.
He was in Montana.
Yeah, he owned a place there in Montana.
What section of Montana?
Close to Billings.
Close to Billings.
Billings
okay.
area.
So
Now,
you-
why did your family leave Russia? What was the situation?
They left Russia. I'll be careful what I'm saying here. From all I know why. I know why. They were scared of that government. That government, Russian government, went to pieces at that time, as we've known them.
Be careful
They
what
were
you say.
suicidal. And it was that was one of the reasons.
When the Bolsheviks.
The other reason is, and here, this is the basic reason,
Mm-hmm.
the Russians' idea of the whole thing that was unsettled, the Volga region, and they thought we'd marry, the young people would marry the Russian girls, which they didn't. They married German girls. And towards the end, very strictly, German girls
Stayed within their own.
stayed with their own. And that's one thing they didn't like.
And you're
They were carried it so far, they don't even have the villages, the name of the village anymore.
and your dad actually had a lot of land and ranch there that he just left, right?
Just left.
He just
they
up and
lost
left it.
Walked away from it.
Walked
The
away.
government had given them the land, you know,
Mhm.
and built a building.
He left quite a
Yeah.
big estate there.
Through,
Got dead for
Captain
the
the
day of no right. Got around. Yes,
Okay, well, why don't we cut it here and you can focus in on the pictures of your dad and mom.
Okay, why don't you just bring them
Can
on
you
down? Actually,
okay.
it's very simple.
That's my father at Claremont, Wyoming.
About how old was he here?
Oh, Dad was about 65 there.
Wow, he's looking good for that age.
Yeah.
And then your mother, there's a picture of your mother.
And there's my mother. And she's a little harder to judge, but I would say mother's around that same age.
They
there.
were about the same age.
Yeah, and this was actually when they got down to Sheridan,
They
Wyoming.
were about the same age. Dad was actually a few months younger.
Okay, because when you came over from Russia, you went to Portland originally, and then your
That's
maid.
our first John. After we stayed 1 year at Uncle Peter Lenz's. Peter Lenz's wife was my mother's sister.
Okay.
And after a year, why, they migrated. I wish I'd get rid of this cough.
You're being taped.
That's okay.
I know it. I can't help it. That's why I wish I would. Mother.
But okay, year in Montana, then you went to Portland. Isn't this where this picture was taken?
We were in Portland 2 years.
And this
and
is
this
in
picture-
Portland.
This picture was taken in Portland, yes.
Yeah.
Just put it flat on the table, Andy, and
Really?
that's actually better. Flat off your hand. Thanks.
And then that's you, Grandpa.
And that's me.
And how old were you there?
I was about 6.
You're about 6 years old, and then that's Fred right there,
That's
right?
Fred there.
Okay.
Fred and I did a lot of buddying together, although Fred was quite a little older.
And who's that?
That's Dad.
That's your dad, and that's your mom?
No, that's my sister-in-law.
Oh, that's your mom. I'm sorry.
That's my mom over there. That's John.
Here, Andy, just
Elizabeth was his wife. She's not a Brug either.
angle the picture up a little bit.
Now you want it up, okay.
Just angle it up straight
right,
up, though. That's
what
the
I was
thing.
trying to hold.
Then it's all right.
And
That's
then that's
perfect.
Alex that your mom's holding?
I'm having to stop and think. Next to Peter. Is that Alex?
Because
I believe that's Alex.
that's Peter, and then Alex was the youngest,
Yeah.
right? And,
Alex is probably a baby now.
and just both Peter and Alex just died within the last year, right?
This year,
Just
two
in-
died.
within a year.
Two
Yeah.
died
I've lost 3 brothers
this year.
the last year. 90, 5.
And you're the sole survivor of the
Sole
Brugs, huh?
survivor,
Okay.
The 3 that died were, if you need them for history.
Why don't we show the camera here? Yeah.
All right, and then this
they
is,
were going, Henry is the father of some of the children come and visit us. They're settled here in Los Angeles now. Don't ask us their names, various names.
mm-hmm.
And we weren't very close to that side. But we were close to the family here. For instance, this is a Brug. This is Johnny. That's Johnny.
He was like a
He
brother.
was a little bit older than, and that's Pete. A little bit older.
Just died.
And he died. Where's Alex died,
Mhm.
and my sister died.
Oh, that's Christina up here.
Christine up there,
Okay.
yeah. And I don't see a picture of her husband. No, it's just the 2 families, John
Being
and his
recorded,
family.
Phil, be
But-
sure.
And there's only 4 of them there. One, that's Natalie.
Yeah.
Okay,
So those 4,
great.
they're all Brugs.
And what about this picture here? This looks like it.
That's in Brugs too, alongside the house. Show you.
Where?
Where was this taken?
Portland, Oregon.
This is Portland also?
Yeah, Portland,
This
Oregon.
this
looks
is-
like a gang of kids that plays kick the
Yeah,
can outside.
That's Fred, and
Doesn't
that's
it?
you.
Gang of
Now you
boys.
got it.
Right, and that's Pete?
Johnny.
Oh, Johnny.
He's not a brother.
Is that Pete right there?
That's Pete right there. So that's
Okay,
one
and then
there.
this was a cousin or something, right?
He's cousin. Straight.
Okay. So you were in Portland for about a year, and then you headed back to Montana in about 1914, 15?
About 14 to 15. About 15. Not
Okay.
14. We stayed there a year. A couple of years.
And here's a good picture of you and your brothers in the fields. Where's
This is
the?
Rochester, Wyoming, close to Sheridan.
And so you went down there right after Montana.
Not that. That's Wyoming.
That's Wyoming.
I said Montana.
Yeah.
Wyoming.
Rochester, Wyoming, isn't it?
And
Rochester, Wyoming.
who's who there?
Starting with, that's me on the outside there.
How old were you about?
Oh, I was about 8 or 9.
8 or 9 years old?
And Fred, who died last year, and Pete, who died last year, and Johnny, who died last year.
And he was like a brother to you, but he was your cousin.
So of those 3, I'm the only one.
Why don't you
Yeah,
tell
that's right.
Philip the story about that?
Yeah, what were you doing here?
About
We were thinning beets is what we were doing.
You're in the beet fields, huh?
But I can tell you a joke you've told me for many years ago.
Well, go ahead, tell it.
What's the
What
joke?
is it?
You tell it, Grandma.
Okay, to get these kids to work real well, their brother-in-law came to the place and
Alberta.
Alberta.
Christine's
And,
husband, more
he
accurate.
worked real fast and was telling jokes,
Telling
probably
jokes.
dirty
And
jokes.
we
Probably nasty ones.
almost
And
dirty
so
jokes.
they worked real fast to be able to keep up and hear Al Bertram's jokes. And so otherwise they'd slack, you know. So
Like-
that was his way of,
That's incentive to work hard
He
to
was
keep
good.
up.
so you can hear these jokes ahead.
Oh, geez.
And so they did
Actually,
get
you
a-
would-
You remember any of them? Were they good?
I wish I remembered.
Well, this is a family tape anyway. We don't need any dirty jokes. Okay, well,
Ah, so that
Phil's
he used to tell me.
sordid past. All
okay.
right.
Okay, ready, Graham? This is actually just like a year before that beet field picture we just saw, but this is in Park
Fuzzy,
City,
huh?
Misco, Montana in 1917.
Misco is just a bird.
And it's
off
just
of Park City.
there's Peter in the front and Philip in the back, and the dog is Buster.
Buster, that's
Alex is in the front, and Johnny's in the back.
Johnny is a
Natalia Brug. Who was Natalia Brug in the front?
Johnny's oldest sister.
Johnny's sister.
Niece.
Okay, so your niece.
That's the tally there.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
Those they had there.
okay,
too, yeah.
no,
So
regarding.
this is 1917, and then this is 1919 in Claremont, Big Corral,
Oh,
Wyoming.
that's a good one.
And we have from left to right,
The Little Rascals.
and really, all we need is Zero the dog, or Philip Brug, Peter Brug, Fred Brug, Alex Brug, and Johnny Brug from left to right.
Check,
They're all brothers but Johnny.
check the caps. That's really good, the
Those,
caps.
Those hats are something else,
The
huh?
CAPS,
That was
caps.
the day of the caps.
They're gonna go out and get zoot suits next, I think.
Okay, then we're gonna fast forward up when they're
This
pretty,
was close to
man.
Sheridan.
pretty Hot Wheels in
They were
Sheridan,
really-
Wyoming,
Woo!
They were close in,
1926.
they were beginning
A Buick.
to build
They
roads for
always
cars.
bought
It's a
Buick.
1925 Master Buick
About
Sport
five-
touring car.
This was the Brug family car?
Boom,
Yeah.
Sheridan, Wyoming, and Wrench Ranch.
Wrench.
Wrench.
Wrench Ranch.
Wrench Ranch.
1926, and Fred's driving, and then right behind him is Grandpa Phil.
That's
Uh-huh.
right.
Looking pretty dapper, Phil.
Now they're
Look
starting.
pretty slick, do
They're
it?
starting to cruise in their wheels now, and this is 26, and Grandpa and Grandma actually met 3 years later for the first time in 1929.
Now, about
Is
20.
that right? And that was in what town? Is that Claremont?
Yes, I should correct it. He saw me.
He
and
saw
not to
you.
I was 5 years old.
You're-
4 years old. I visited this general school, the country school. Mother took me for the day to visit. That was custom. They always took my
Mildred
little
and
sister.
Helen
That was
and
what
Mark.
year?
Well, I'm born in 14, so I'll say that it was 5,
So 1919.
19. Uh-huh.
So you guys
1919.
first laid eyes on each other in 1919,
Uh-huh.
and
And
little
then-
did you know.
Yeah. And
Little
he,
did I-
then he moved away.
You sold him a loaf of bread when you were 5 years
No,
old?
that's 1929.
Oh,
I
okay.
said he came
Not
back.
much later.
He
Okay.
came back in 1929, and we had the little store in Claremont. We called it a bakery.
Uh-huh.
And he came in. They were moving to Claremont. At
We
night,
Now,
were-
Ruth-
We
truckload
were
of
moving back.
furniture.
When you were 5 years old and you saw him when you went to school that day, do you remember seeing him that day?
Do you know? Remember him all of my life. There was something about his eyes. You know,
Ooh, yeah.
they are different. Does anybody notice that?
First time I
And
heard
it
that.
stuck in my mind. And when I saw him in 1929, same person I had all my life. So it
That's
must have
pretty
been
amazing.
destiny, huh?
You guys were destined.
Yeah.
Just
Wow, that's neat.
Uh-huh.
Okay, well,
All
we're
right.
now going to start with Grandma's side of the family and lead up to the day they met, and then we'll go from there. Okay, Graham, now we're doing
My mother's.
your early years, and this is an
This-
early picture of your mom and her family, right?
Yes, that's right. My mother is the first the first row on the left.
Right there.
Yeah, and she was at that age 18. No, what would she be here? Well, 20. And this is her beautiful family. I always
They were a
praise.
good-looking family. she
I
was.
think that
Well,
is
good.
so
Well,
beautiful.
What was your grandma's name?
My grandma's name.
I mean, your mom's
my,
name. I'm sorry.
Gertrude
Gertrude.
Johnson,
Gertrude Johnson.
of sort of a Swedish, I suppose, descendant in a way. The Johnsons were always
And
Swedish.
where were they
That
from?
was in Iowa, the state of Iowa. And this is and Cora is the oldest, and Uncle Frank is the youngest in that family. A very proud family.
Yeah,
So
that's
this is
a nice
Iowa.
this is your mom
My
and
mother.
her brothers and sisters.
Yes,
Okay.
all the way
Okay.
through. And
And then here's another picture of her. It says in 1895 when she was 18 years old.
That's
Gertrude Johnson.
Johnson.
Right.
And what was your what's your heritage, Ruth?
Well, you know, my heritage would be like the Zing family was Swiss, and like I say, way down the road,
Not the Johnsons.
they would be, Johnsons would be of Swedish or Norwegian
In that
Mhm.
descent,
That's where
but nothing too defined on that, excepting
Okay.
my father.
That's where you get your blonde curly hair.
Yeah, but I was the only one in all six.
And this is a picture of your father,
Lloyd Zing.
L-O-Y, Lloyd Lewis Zing.
Yes, Lloyd Lewis Zing, and
Says-
he was born in Iowa. They both were born in the same state. And before he married or met my mother, I guess. And they married. It was a very
They got-
sudden romance, I think.
Well,
Should I tell
Tell
the
that
little
story.
joke?
That's a great
Absolutely.
story.
Absolutely. And this sister teased my mother, Gertrude, all her life because my mother said she was getting married, but she didn't know my dad long enough to really even recognize him, I suppose. So the marriage was to happen, and he came on the train from, I forgot what city it was, or wouldn't know. And my mother and her oldest sister here, Estelle, met him at the were to meet him at the depot.
That was at Sheridan, Wyoming.
And my mother said, I'm not sure I will know him.
She wasn't even
Oh my
gonna
Or
recognize.
would
gosh.
I recognize him? She said, I'm not sure. So they waited for the passengers to get off, and my Aunt Estelle would say to Gertrude, is this him? And she said, no, don't think so. Another man would get off, Well, you think that's him? I'm not sure. I'll just have to keep waiting.
Did she recognize him when she finally saw him?
Finally, I get, yeah, and
Oh my
Phil
gosh.
said, is this him? Oh, I think so. I think that's, now whether this is
We're glad.
embellished or not, but I always remember the story that she really didn't recognize him very well when
Well-
he got off of the train to be married.
Ruth, we're really glad she recognized him.
Yeah.
I know.
Changed the
It worked
course of
out
history,
good.
didn't it?
It did, and it wasn't always fortunate that they met. They had lots of problems. You
Well,
know,
how
like
did
the
he
six-
how did he even come to ask her to marry him when
Well, you
they
know-
barely knew each other?
Well, my mother didn't talk about that very much. She
Didn't know.
didn't give us too many details, but that was a joke on her, that she wasn't quite sure which one that was she was going to marry.
Well,
And of
gosh.
course, they kidded her all her life. Uh-huh.
well, she was kind of an old maid too. She was 23,
She
right?
was 23, and you were
In those days,
you were a loser in those days. If you were 23 and had not found anyone yet.
Yeah, it's time to rush about that
And,
age.
yeah, it is. It's
Yep.
desperate.
Beggars can't be choosers. Gotta get out
Well,
there.
anyway, this is their wedding photo right here, right?
And here they were married in the year of 1900 at Christmas time.
1900, is that right?
A handsome couple.
Now we know where we get our curly hair in our
Oh,
family.
I get mine at the beauty shop.
Looks like Andy's profile at other times in his life.
Oh, yeah.
He had
Handsome
curly
couple.
hair.
He did. He had dark curly hair, and he would have never lost his hair. He's that kind. And my brother Glenn had the same hair, and he was the only one who inherited that nice curly hair.
Okay.
Of course, in those days, it was a disgrace to have
They
curly
went
hair.
from Iowa. They got married in
To
Iowa.
Sheridan, Wyoming.
They
Yes.
got married in Iowa.
Yes.
See,
And then
he
they
came
immediately
from-
went to Sheridan.
Went to Sheridan.
Why is that?
Well, they were going to settle in Wyoming at this time.
They could-
Grandpa Zing kept writing to them that he had come out before and found this place and how wonderful that country was, he thought.
Is this the place you
That's
moved
the
to?
place. And so they came to this beautiful old White House here.
Says
And that's where I was born in 1914.
I got to see this.
This is in Claremont,
And
Wyoming.
No, it is in Sheridan, Wyoming.
it says
Okay.
on the back, the Zing family ranch on Big Goose Creek,
Yeah.
3
Okay.
miles west of Sheridan, Wyoming.
Pretty well faded out, but that's it.
It's so faded.
Beautiful house.
Yeah.
But we left there to go improve upon some homestead land. That's what my father was after, homestead land, free land.
Free land.
And
gonna
so
homestead.
The best of the land was already gone.
Government gave it to you if you would farm it, huh?
If you would stay on there 5 years and make so many years of improvement within the 5 years, then it was yours. So we did that. We kept moving back and live a while in one place and another, depending on what the school year held, you know. And he got it improved and built a reservoir. He went way out, sort of. Built a reservoir, and it was not excellent land. It really wasn't. It was what they called alkali. A lot of it was alkali land, because the good land had really been taken up
It had been
pretty
taken
much.
by
And
the
then
cattle.
who came along here?
Oh, Ruth came along number 6.
Can you focus in on that at all?
Oh,
I
you
was
betcha.
1914. This is, I think, probably one of
Look
2 baby
there.
pictures of all we had.
That's the only baby picture you still have.
Yes, that's really it.
Awful cute.
And people didn't take pictures in those days. Who had a camera?
Who had
you
a
know?
camera is more
It wasn't the thing.
pretty
And
scarce.
very few places could you get photos developed. It was pioneering, I'm telling you. That was real
Oh,
pioneering.
that was a
So
real
that's
fun.
you in 1919?
Yes.
1950.
That was before
1914.
14,
I was
okay.
just
She was
born.
born.
There. I'm the last
quite a long
of the
time.
family.
You were the youngest of...
Youngest of 6.
Oh my goodness.
And I was the only blonde in the whole family. Everybody had dark hair but me. So,
Okay, so
and
you're-
we left this place and went to Claremont, and from this place,
Whoops,
we
I'm sorry.
my dad tore a house, there was 2 houses on that ranch. He tore one house down, nail by nail, salvaged the wood, and shipped it about, let's see, Sheridan, 45 miles or 50.
Oh
And we
my
hauled
gosh.
it, they hauled it by wagon and horses to our homestead land. It was about, 3-4 miles from the depot, the freight yard. And they put it back in the very same shape that it came down.
That's amazing.
They resurrected that house, in other words,
Rebuilt the whole thing.
and rebuilt it. And we lived there until my father died, not in this place, the place that he built from this place. But
In
that is
Claremont, near
in-
Claremont.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was Sheridan House, and we homesteaded our land in Claremont, which was about 40 miles difference.
When did you move from Sheridan to Claremont then?
Well,
About-
the final move probably was 1918. That was the year that the flu was
So-
prevalent. And
That's
we
right.
all had that terrible flu.
By that
That's-
time, we were there.
That's right.
And they
But
were,
we didn't know.
Yeah.
and you had to have water well, and we hadn't gotten the water well in yet, but they did get the drill, water drill. What is that called? It's a drill, to drill a well, and we all had the flu, that terrible flu. And I can still remember that pounding, going down into the ground to bring up, and all this silt and stuff would come up, and to get the water well. Well,
So you all
we
had the
got-
flu with no water.
I don't know where the water was
You-
coming from.
You had the flu too, Ruth? You had the,
Everyone, yeah, and my
Yeah.
mother, we almost lost.
We
my
had
mother.
pretty
She
bad,
was-
the country, that was
Did
Oh, yeah.
ravaged.
She ended up.
my
pretty
grandma
frail.
had it too.
Did
Oh.
everybody survive in your family?
Everybody did.
Yeah. Because you're the youngest of 6,
Mhm.
and your oldest brothers were Clark and Glenn.
Clark.
I know
Louis
Glenn
Clark,
well, I didn't know
And
Clark too well.
if who's
And
in,
Glenn was second,
The boys were the
the
oldest,
2 boys first,
They
and
were
then
old.
That's your
came
father
4
there.
girls.
and the
then
4
came
girls were
Mildred.
who?
Mildred, who just passed away this year, and I'm
She
still
was
missing
old.
her.
Yeah.
She was my,
We'll see a lot of
Dear
pictures
sister.
of Mildred.
and then it was Helen.
It was a
Was
kick in the
second.
pants. She
And-
was funny as heck.
Yeah, she was a ambitious,
Had a great sense of humor.
happy-go-lucky gal.
I still remember Helen's laugh.
Oh, yeah, she laughed so much. And Mildred
Yeah,
was the
laughed
serious
deep.
one in our family. Mildred was the
Mildred was
serious
the
girl.
serious one.
Helen was the laughing, ambitious gal. Marjorie was the glamour girl.
A party girl.
And she,
That's
yeah,
better.
she
Party girl.
married 4 times
Well.
in her young life. And I will have to say, she picked some pretty bad
Pretty
guys.
lousy guy. She
You
picked some
know, she
awful
picked the
lousy.
pretty boys.
Yeah.
One wore spats for every day of his life. That was really dressy. You probably don't know, Andrew, what spats are.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know, yeah.
You go to the feet.
And then she married one that just was so good looking and well dressed, but he didn't work. He wanted her to work instead.
That can be a problem.
That can be a problem. And then she found Jack Hoare in 1948. And we still have Jack, but Margie has passed away, and I talk to Jack every few months. And we kind of possess him yet in our family. He was a nice fellow.
He was
They
a
had
nice-
no children.
seems to be a
Mildred
nice
never
guy. I
met
didn't know
Marjorie.
Jack
Excuse
too
me,
well.
Marjorie did not have a family.
Oh.
Neither did Mildred. No children.
Mar-
Okay, these are some pictures of Claremont, Wyoming in 1920.
Uh-huh.
A bustling town. Want to
Oh,
tell a little bit about that, Grandma?
yeah. Well, I think that's really probably earlier than 1920. It's pretty empty there, but this is I graduated out of high school at this little town of in Claremont, the high school, and it was 1932, I think, 31. And this is the country school.
This is 1921.
Yeah.
Right
21.
here.
Yeah, this was before us, but that's just the view of the
And what is
Little
that?
tiny
What
town.
does that say? At Working Gap School, 1921?
Yorkie Gap. The name,
Yorkie Gap.
yeah, Wyoming has the
And that's
funniest names for their little burgs and.
that's
Don't
Ruth.
forget
And this is called Yorkie Gap School. Why, I don't know. It was named years ago. And this is Ruth right here,
And there's Aunt Helen.
and Helen,
Yeah.
and Margie and Philip's cousins are all in here also.
that right?
They all moved. This is when I first started
Here's another one up
at
here.
the same school.
And
And it grew when the German Russians all moved back into that valley. It grew to 56 students in one room. It was a nice
my
big school.
gosh.
One room.
56
in one room.
in one room, and they had one teacher all this time until they did get one more teacher.
So
and
all of-
you heard classes all around you.
All of these people were in the same class.
Yeah, well, school, not class,
school, okay.
grade, or
'Cause-
school, just a school.
That's you. That's Aunt Margie.
Uh-huh.
And that's Helen.
Helen,
and
Sister
then
Helen.
that's Mildred.
Sister Mildred.
Mildred sure had serious looks on her face. She was a
She was
serious.
Very
always
serious, always
serious. She
serious.
took care of business.
She had
I'll
no
tell
family.
you.
Okay.
And
Well,
she
we got
sort of raised us in a.
we got some more we want to
She
show.
was
Okay.
the eldest. All right, go.
Here's a good one of the Zing girls in 1921. Looks like out in the field.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it always looked like in the field. It was pretty desolate.
You look pretty serious there, Grandma.
Oh yeah, this was serious business. You know, you didn't get your picture taken very often, and so this is Sister Mildred.
She's
and,
smiling there, Mildred is.
Yeah,
She is
Mildred,
smiling.
Mildred was serious about life too in her entire life.
She had her first job.
But that's
but
that's a
she-
spitting image of my sister Meredith.
Claremont
And
used to
Meredith
have
looks
that.
like that.
You look exactly like Meredith.
Isn't that funny? Well, you notice is the camera on now, the
Uh-huh.
voice? I better be careful what I'm saying. And, but that is a very clear picture. It's kept its color all these years.
Here's another good one of the same year, 1921.
Yeah, this is on our homestead land.
That's
after
the
we
Zing
had
girls
moved there.
again.
And
And
my
that's-
mother made all these clothes. This was a navy blue wide wale corduroy with pearl buttons and a white collar. And take notice of our shoes. That is typical of the country girls' shoes.
Look at those.
They're pretty roughshod.
Those boots
Yeah,
there.
and they're all high-laced, if you can see, the high-laced and black cotton stockings. And we really thought we were dressed up.
That's Helen,
Helen.
Marjorie,
Mildred.
Margie, and
Mildred.
Mildred. Mildred's
Uh-huh.
smiling there too, hey.
Yeah. Oh, she
Okay.
Okay.
had her sense of humor, but first she took care of business. I'll
Yeah.
tell you that. To her dying day.
Somebody's got to do it.
Somebody, and she took the responsibility. This is
All right.
Sister Marjorie and I at about
This is
Mildred and Ruth.
1930 here.
Uh-huh. Now, this would be in about that age. We opened the restaurant in about 1928, probably.
Why did you open the restaurant?
Well, my father had died
He died. Yeah.
at age 44 and
Yeah,
left
the
my
girls
mother with all these children yet to raise. I was 9 years old, the youngest, and of course Mildred was out on her first job in the bank in Claremont. And
And she
so
used
she
the
started
girls as
out
the- as
with what
waitresses.
you call
And
just
she did.
confections and bakery. She bought her
She done a
bakery
beautiful job raising the
products wholesale in Sheridan, and they came by train. One good thing about Claremont, the railroad, it was a good railroad center. All of the trains stopped.
children. All the
So
trains
the
come.
transportation was good. They had a good freight depot. And so my mother just had to think of some way to make a living. She sold the
And she done a pretty good
homestead.
job.
She sold the homestead. It was forced sale because my father was very advanced in his ideas, and so he left a mortgage,
Debt to be
a
paid,
debt
huh?
to be paid. And of course, the rulings were that they had to leave the widow $1,500, period.
Big
And-
money.
And the
In those days it was particularly big.
And so the ranch and its equipment was sold at an auction sale, and it left my mother $1,500, but the rest went to pay off the debts.
Yeah.
I think my father, he was disabled totally, and I think that he had gotten into this stage and kept getting more disabled all the time.
Cutting over his head then, huh?
Yeah, he
couldn't
was in,
make up
and
the
no
debt.
way out.
Right.
And he had cattle. Mainly, he was a cattleman. We didn't really farm it, we grew hay, and cattle was his.
It was a little bit too high.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Wasn't
so
something
then we
that
sold
elevation
all
to
of that, and my mother had to think of something to get out of that ranch, and I remember the day it was auctioned off so well, and so she moved got an idea, shopped around for some business in Claremont, and she had these four
Done a good
girls
job,
to help her,
too.
well, three by this time, to help. So she bought a little building in Claremont, and she just opened up, like I say, the bakery through wholesale business. And she just grew as time went on, and people needed this or needed that. It was only a population of 200 people in that town, very
That was
small.
about the size
But it
of
was a
our-
good railroad center.
Yeah, it's by the railroad stop. eh?
Yeah, and yes, the railroad went right parallel to Maine,
Mhm.
one side.
Wow.
And so she grew, and people wanted her to serve breakfast, so she served breakfast and lunch. And then they wanted to know, why doesn't she serve dinner? So she did the
And
cooking,
who the restaurant?
and she had we 3 girls.
Part of
To
a
do-
family on her
yeah.
own restaurant, huh?
And it was so much like Alice's Restaurant, the old movie Alice's Restaurant.
People-
Everybody stopped. If
Everybody
they
would get off the train and have lunch or dinner at your mom's
Well,
restaurant.
about all we had off of the train would be the brakeman and
Oh.
the people.
The workers,
The train switched there, you know, and if they have to wait for another train, they would come and eat at breakfast usually. Otherwise, they went right through with a diner or something. But anyway, her little businesses grew from this to this, and she supported all of us girls. We did what she'd say to us. Well, you know, I can't do this without you girls, when we would ask for something. Usually we'd pick something out of the Montgomery Ward catalog.
Is that a picture of her
Well-
right about then?
Yes.
Yeah.
It must have
she's
been
heavier there.
terribly traumatic to have lost her husband when she still had a whole
I can't
family.
imagine.
The whole
And
family
you know,
raised.
That's
Women
gotta be-
didn't work
Yeah,
back then
big
either.
road.
and they didn't
Big
drive.
Mhm.
You know, this was when cars were, this was early in the car era, you know, early. Women did not drive.
Yeah.
No, it was
And I
not a little
don't really know
driving,
how
it was
she
done
got
by
that
men.
all
She
together.
was tough.
She was
Never complained and.
Well, she was rugged.
And here's a really pretty picture of you in 1929, Grandma.
That's about when I met Philip,
So you're-
about in there.
15 years old?
15? Well, I met him pretty young.
Well, you're
Didn't happen right
1929.
Which one are you looking at?
Right.
That's
30, yeah. And I remember that coat. It had a little fur collar and it was a
Are my
pretty
fingers
tweed.
white?
We call that our summer coat. We had summer coats and winter coats. Do they still do that in Montana way?
oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
oh yeah.
You have your summer wardrobe and
Sure.
winter. But anyway, today, I'm getting back to that era of my mother having to do what she did. I don't know how she did it. She would get on the train and go to Sheridan and shop for the equip
She
that
did a
restaurant.
beautiful
That's
job.
amazing.
Here's a good picture of her in
And that's,
1941.
yeah, that's 1941. That was the
Yeah.
year the war was declared.
The war.
When did she die?
World War II started about then.
She died in 1950, either 7 or 8. I'd have to look up
Oh.
my records.
Okay.
And she really wasn't sick long. She was 81, 82. And
nice.
she just had an aneurysm on her heart, and I think she was gone within 2 weeks,
Yeah.
which is a fairly good record. I mean,
she had a
she
pretty
was
nice long life for being
She
such a
did,
rough
and-
life she
and
had.
she was
She had a
such a
rough life,
meek.
right.
She in the meantime, I mean, she was a meek, mild person.
Mhm.
She's a good woman.
Uh-huh. And so we were our little place was the center of the town. Nobody passed it. If they were coming up the street, they came in.
Social
way-
place. huh?
They just came in. It was like an Alice's restaurant, really.
That's great. All
And
right.
You want to talk about the showgirl life?
Grandma was a dancing girl.
All right.
Yeah. So anyway, could you show this, the instructors here, these 2 showgirls from Boston. They moved to the little town of Claremont with 200 population.
Gave us the big
Nice
thing. Look.
game.
And can you
Gams,
imagine? Yeah, they
Those
were
legs.
dancers, professional
They
dancers.
were good. They were
And
good.
so somebody had asked them if they would teach us young girls there, that age group. The high school was very small.
This is the
enrollment, you know.
result, the Rockettes of
Result.
Wyoming.
Where's-
The Claremont Rockettes
Where's Ruth? Point
Ruth.
Ruth at.
is
Right there.
there. No, that's my sister.
Oh.
Margie. Ruth is here.
Oh, there
Uh-huh.
you are. Look at those
And-
gams.
Oh, take a look. Posed like everything. And here is Ruth again. These were the, well, you might call them the, can't say that word, pom-pom girls of Claremont.
Who did you dance for?
It was entertained between acts of a play.
Oh, so you
Ah.
would come on stage
Yeah.
between
And
acts
the-
and entertain the crowd.
Yeah. Mhm. And they had shut the lights off of the stage. I don't know what our lights were. They had a little tiny private system for lights. They had no electricity in that town. Can you believe it?
No,
And
we-
so we all had a flashlight. And, you know, the routine, you used your flashlight to show the action, you know.
Uh-huh.
And then we took that to the next town of Arvada, took that show to Arvada.
Oh, Arvada, that's right.
And we all came out on stage in the dark, and my flashlight didn't work.
Oh no.
So here was this whole gap, and they played the piano, whole gap. Everybody could be seen but me. My flashlight wouldn't work.
Oh, no.
Your dancing career went down the tubes
down
then,
the
huh?
tubes. That
All right.
And so we always had fun with that.
Could have
part.
been a famous
You're
dancer except for a
getting into
flashlight
this.
battery. Okay, now we've got up to about 1930, and this is when Ruth and Phil got together.
Yep.
About that
Rumble
time.
seat.
And this is a picture of Grandma, Ruth, Grandpa, Phil, and Aunt Helen. And you have a pretty funny story to tell. This is actually Grandpa Brug and Aunt Helen, Grandpa Phil, in 1930. What was that story, Grandpa?
Well, that was it at this Rumble seat story.
We didn't hear it on tape though, so you have to tell it for the
Oh,
tape.
Now be sure you get it
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, Fritz Wagner, who was my first cousin, was going with Marjorie, Ruth's sister. And he had one of the first rumble seat cars in that country. See?
All right, pretty spiffy.
So Fritz was driving and Marge was waiting with him in the front seat, and I was waiting for Helen on the back seat. I was halfway going down, and instead of Helen, Ruth came.
You were waiting for a date for Helen to go dancing,
We were going dancing or doing something.
and you were waiting in the back seat for Helen, and guess who came out and hopped in?
And he said,
Ruth
get in.
said, Ruth.
So you just hopped in with Ruth and left Helen at home.
I don't know what
No,
happened.
I better tell this correctly. It's not very nice.
Okay.
Excuse me. We had our shifts at the restaurant, 3 meals a day,
Wow.
3 girls. And so Helen had the evening crowd, and I had the noonday crowd, and Marjorie had the breakfast shift, we called them. And so Philip and Fritz came with that Chevrolet with the rumble seat.
First rumble
And
seat
so,
in that part of the country.
Being very selfish, I didn't do any of her shift. It was her shift. So someone came in, it was like a straggler, came in for a meal in the evening. And so I said it to Helen, it's your shift. I wasn't going to attend to her shift.
Poor
it's your
Helen,
shift.
she got-
So she got out of that rumble seat and went in. It was the only customer there was that evening, at that time of day. And so she went in to do her job, and Philip said, and I came out, and Philip said, climb in. So I did.
And the rest is history, huh?
And then Fritz turned the key and left.
Man.
Took us all.
So that kind of put a damper on your and
That
Helen
left Helen,
relationship,
yeah.
huh?
Real
Yeah,
damper.
Helen had lots of boyfriends. So it
She
was-
moved on, huh?
She moved on, and so that was the end. And so
That was 1930.
Right.
And you were married in what year?
Before World War
32.
II.
Yeah, 31.
31 or 32 long in there.
Just a year or two later, you were married, huh?
Yeah. And, well, it was longer than that. My dates might be a little wrong here. Anyway, that was how we got started, and then the Saturday night dances were the biggest thing in your
That was the big
life.
thing, right.
I'm sorry. And Philip was a good dancer, and he dressed up so beautifully.
By that time,
And I was like my
I was
sister
probably
Margie, I
dressing
went
for
for the
her.
good clothes.
You were pretty impressed by his spiffiness on the dance floor and his
And,
outfits. Huh?
And we
Alright.
had to wait for quite a while to get married because I wasn't about to quit school, you know.
You were still in high school.
she's still going to school.
Yeah. And so I might go on to this, right?
Sure.
This picture here is, well, we were not married yet. And like I showed you in my mother's side, her sister and Stell had the factory dress factory in Long Beach, California. And these were the daytime pajamas that came into vogue at about 1930. It was like a bodysuit today. They're not called bodysuit, but they were pajamas down here, very flowy.
They look pretty.
Beautiful.
And this was my outfit. You dressed with jodhpurs and riding pants.
And look at the boots.
And and so we traded costumes that day, and I wore Helen's and Helen wore mine. So she would send us fashionable clothes every once in a while.
Well, let's get some shots of when you guys got married. Okay. Well, there's not any wedding photos that we have of you two.
Of the
But-
Montana wedding.
But soon, yeah, in Hardin, Montana.
Hardin, Montana, we married. We went over the state line because that was
That's
the
not where we had the
fashion.
wedding. We had the wedding in Wyoming.
Well, that was the reception.
Oh,
Reception in Miami.
On Thanksgiving Day at Grandma Brug's house.
And then soon after, Uncle Don arrived.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a cute picture of him in 1934.
Isn't that cute?
not right.
There's a little bugger.
And here's,
Pardon me, honey.
and then, how? 3 years later, Mom arrived.
2.
2 years
2
later.
years later. In
And here's a good picture of
The 2.
my mom, Phyllis, and Uncle Don.
Mhm.
Very cute.
This is Don.
And then here's another one in Buffalo, Wyoming.
Yes, that we had moved to Buffalo by
That's
that
Uncle
time.
Don and my mom
Mhm.
down here too. That's a
And
really
she was
cute.
about 2. This is at number 2 Ranch Claremont, those 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is right after we moved to Buffalo Ranch.
So number 2 ranch, and then you moved to Buffalo Ranch,
Mm-hmm.
and they were all in Wyoming.
And then we left Buffalo to go to California.
Okay.
That was the end of Wyoming.
There was a Phil's naturalization picture too.
Oh,
Did you
yeah, I
want to?
wanted to show you that. This is a little bit earlier, but that's a
Mhm.
good picture
That's
of the young
naturalization.
buck in 1921.
Yeah, he was 21
His
and
naturalization.
got his naturalization right away.
Yeah.
That's what you had to do.
That made it meaning.
So, 1930, when did you move to California?
1938,
1938?
March 1st, we
You
left
moved to Alameda, California?
straight to Alameda where Philip's only sister lived.
And why did you move?
Well, we needed a job. It was depression.
Jobs were scarce.
The deep
Awful
depression.
scarce. I don't think you've ever seen it very like
And my sister and her husband and family lived here in Ventura, and they worked for Bruce Long's company.
that. That's where he became one of our close friends. Bruce,
And
Bruce and
so
Wanda Long,
uh,
both dead now.
our brother-in-law wrote to us. Nobody used the telephone in those days. It was not like it is today. You didn't telephone. You wrote a letter, and they said, if you've got $100, I think I can get you a job at the Helms Bakery delivery.
Mm.
It was a delivery route, very high quality.
There's the Helms Bakery truck
There
that
it
you
is.
worked on. Can you
Yeah.
I
get
have a
that?
better one. I have a better one here.
I worked for them.
And
you?
that bakery was the one that supplied the
Really
bread
was a lifesaver.
for the Olympics. It was selected for the Olympics in, let's see, that would have been about 1940, I think the Olympics were. And it was very famous product. And
Grandpa's smoking a cigarette, working on the Helms
sure,
Bakery
he's
truck.
got a cigarette in his mouth and had to
That-
scrub the
that-
bakery truck every
I shouldn't
Saturday.
be doing it, that's right.
Okay, these for photos in 1941 when you went back to Uncle Fred's house for a family reunion?
Yes, or it could have been 1942.
Well,
We,
okay.
see, we
Either
had
one,
the, we
you
did
pick.
have the new Pontiac, I think we went back in that. I think it was
And
1942.
it
These are just cute
And it was
pictures of
not
Uncle
a
Don
different
and
car.
Mom
Mm-hmm.
on a horse, and then that's
Country scenes.
down here, that's Uncle Don, and then Mom up front, 1941 at
Very
Buffalo, Wyoming.
cute.
Yeah.
I'll have to get another album, I think.
Okay, let's get to the Ventura ones now. This is Uncle Don and Mom in Alameda.
Uh-huh.
When they first moved to Alameda, she was 3 years old and Donnie was
No.
5?
Yeah, 3 and 5 at that time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then they moved from Alameda to Ventura.
Ventura, because we've got a job here.
And there's a shot of Ventura, 1939, Uncle Don and Mom. And who's the little baby?
Well, he lived in the building where we lived.
He's
and
just a neighbor?
Phyllis, yes, and Phyllis always had care of the children in the neighborhood.
She would just take them under her wing, huh?
Uh-huh, and they always loved her.
hmm
And
Then you moved from Ventura to Santa Barbara.
only
right.
for about a year we was there, but that
What
was
year was that?
that would have been the year that war was declared, which was 1942. We left there.
Beginning
because
of
the
war was pretty strong by that time.
And then what's What's this?
Well, this is Wanda and Bruce and Junie and my sister Margie, or is that Philip?
That's Philip.
Oh yeah, and Wanda. He's hugging Wanda here.
That's Bruce and Wanda, Grandpa Phil, Grandma.
And this is my brother-in-law, Sister Margie's husband. And this is Judy.
And this is in Santa Barbara.
And that was the days of Santa Barbara, and here they were
Pretty
in our
picture.
yard in Santa Barbara.
Mhm.
At about, I think, first grade,
41.
second grade, 42, must have been 41,
Then you moved back to Ventura?
To the
Okay.
beach, to Ventura.
It was at this
This
cute
is
house you moved
the-
to?
Yes,
They moved to this cute house. We'll go down and see it. It's still there on Kingston Lane.
Kingston Lane,
on
English type
Pierpont.
house, very good, it's a character house,
Oh,
very
yeah.
lovely.
Oh, yeah.
And it had no brush, no scenery, no.
There's a cute picture of Mom in
Uh-huh.
1941.
Yeah,
One of the
that's-
gals.
Yeah.
And Beverly? Is that the
Beverly,
Beverly?
cousin
that-
Beverly, here, yeah.
She's still here?
She's
and
here.
living in the area.
Wonderful girl to me.
Is that her
Who's
next to
shorter
it
than
also
Bud?
in the short dress?
And then that's Mom in 1942.
We lived at the
Cute.
beach in this English house.
Look at those legs. Look like Meredith's legs.
Very much, very much.
Those long, bony legs.
Yeah. Yeah, the Meredith, Linda keeps telling me that Meredith looks very much like.
Here's another one
Or-
of Mom and Beverly in
She thinks
1939.
Lauren looks like Meredith too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So tell us about this beach house. The beach house was down.
Okay, I'll tell you, it's a long story. When you needed a place to live, even though depression was still on in here, you could not rent a house if you had children. They were anti-children.
It was like poison.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I would go, if I see a place for rent, we needed to rent a place then, and I would ring the doorbell. I had my 2 children with me, and they always looked nice, and the lady would say, well, we don't rent to children. That was it. They'd leave it empty rather than to rent to children. Isn't that ridiculous?
They're not really.
So we couldn't find a place to live. So we moved to Casita Springs for 1 month until I could find a place to live. And Wanda would come out every day and pick me up, and we'd go looking for a place to live. So it turned out that it was a choice of the Ventura Avenue area or Pierpont Bay. And Pierpont Bay was already considered a what do I want to call it? Depressed area.
Poor part of town.
Yeah, that was the beach area,
Where's
which is now the
depressed
most
The $1
elite.
million houses down there were used to be, because it was by the city dump, right?
Yeah, the city dump
Close
was
to it,
beyond. But
yeah.
that really wasn't why it was. It was the tidal wave that swept in, and that was not really a natural tidal wave. It was because they bulldozed all the sand dunes down to make it beautiful when they developed that big development down there.
So you guys had to go slumming it down
Yeah,
by
so
the beach.
because I always said, you can get the nicest house down there for the least money. It was a nice house. So we rented that and moved to the beach. There was no transportation down there. But,
Whoop.
and then in about 2 years, in 1944, the man put it up for sale. He said he wanted to sell the property. Are we interested? And we said, no, not at all. Were we interested in buying it? We said, no, thank you. I didn't want to live at the beach. All right. And so it was a fully furnished house. Dishes, pillows, everything. You just walked in because it was a
beautiful
summer
for good
house
junk furniture.
for
either.
people in Fillmore. People in Fillmore bought beach property because it's so hot there, and they'd come to Ventura for the summer. And so we said no. So we took the car and went up the hill where we are now, and the houses were so high, so much higher priced. And I said, oh, I'm tickled to death to get that house for the money. And he asked
Imagine buy a house for that price.
$2,700.
$2,700
$2,700
For-
cash furnished
for the beach house?
for the beach house. And so we bought it, and I think he was
And that was fully furnished, everything.
everything, dish, and he didn't know whether it was
Including
furnished
dining
or not
forks.
furnished. And I said to the real estate man, he came, or the owner, and I said, is that furnished or unfurnished? Well, he says, is this mine? He didn't know that he had any furniture in there.
And
And he said, well, just let it go. So we paid $2,700
in what year?
cash. We paid cash, we happened to have money by that
Do you
time.
remember the year?
The year was 1944.
You,
think
so you lived in it from like 41, or rented it from 41 or 2 to 44.
42,
So
April,
already
and,
got first.
and then we bought the house, and we were so thrilled with that house.
And how long did you live in that house?
We lived there 12 years. And the war came along.
That was
and
a
there
long
was-
time, told
You
you.
couldn't buy anything, you know, the war was on, everything went to the war ever.
Mm-hmm.
So Philip, when it was over and they released the wood, building materials, he made a third bedroom up here in the attic.
I
for
built
Donnie.
upstairs, it wasn't
And I
made
think
for-
about that now, what a project. He figured out everything and made stair steps and a big room upstairs.
Still there. We'll go show you that.
Yeah.
Don loved that. room.
And then-
He loved that.
And then you moved to this house from this house, right?
We sold this house and bought this house.
Yeah, and that was in
almost never
19.
Now we've lived longer in this house than any place we ever.
Yeah.
And that was 1950 what?
We sold it in 19,
Careful.
I'm gonna be very careful. 53 we bought this. Well, it took,
Must have sold it about 52.
yeah.
How much did you
53.
sell it for in 1952?
Well, we started at 7,500. No, yeah, 75, and it did not move, period, for several months.
And it didn't move then.
And you
that's
could
that.
not loan money, that was the reason. No companies would loan money on that beach
No
because they
mortgage
had
loans.
some water problems.
Yeah.
And
Shows you
so
how we're wrong.
a real estate man kind of stole it from us, I might say, for 5,000.
Well, heck, you doubled your money.
I
That's
know.
not a bad investment.
No, we paid it for 27, lived there for 12 years without
Okay,
any
well,
rent. That was good.
let's okay, this is still back at the beach house on Kingston Lane, and we had a new arrival then.
Yeah, a 10-year space between Junie and Junie and Larry, our new surprise.
And he was
Our new
born
surprise
he was born
package.
at the house on Kingston Lane, or that's
Yeah,
where
at the hospital. We lived
Yeah,
at
the
the
hospital.
Kingston Lane, the English-style house. And
that's
Phyllis just took over the baby and was so fond, and she was my little sitter. I would run out once in a while and she'd be glad. And Don was 12.
it's a good picture of Don, and I think he got cleared.
Yeah, he was the oldest.
Yeah, and Phyllis and I wanted a girl so bad, and Donnie wanted the boy. And so he just rejoiced at 12:30 at night in the morning to hear that it was a boy. And
Here's a good
Celebration.
picture of Grandpa and
And
Mom and Larry.
Phyllis broke her arm.
How did she break her arm?
Well,
forgot.
and she was so efficient as a little child. She was so efficient, you could get anything. So Aunt Helen moved to another house, and Aunt Helen asked her if she would do something for her because she could accomplish it in no time, and her daughter Beverly couldn't. She wasn't as efficient. Well, the chair turned over. It's one of the rattan chairs, and it turned over and broke her arm.
Whoops-a-daisy.
And she was 10 years
Here's a
old.
good picture down here.
And so you see the sling.
And there's a good picture of Grandma and Larry. Larry looks a lot like Alex there, doesn't he?
Well, you know, our kids all seem to look just alike in the
Get that?
beginning. And I even look at your mother now.
Mark.
Little Lucy looks like your
Baby
mother
picture.
as a baby.
Yeah.
Lucy
No,
does.
there's very definite features there. Okay. So this is still in the 40s, all through the beach house there.
And it was like another Alice's restaurant.
Everybody. Okay. Go ahead.
Now, we are at the stage, the car stage, the automobile stage. And Don was 16.
You're getting to be
And,
close to.
Said,
And he picked out this car, which is a 1936 classic it was, and here was Don and his dog Spike, our dog.
Spike was a tough old beach dog.
He
He's
was.
a tough
And
old
we
beach
moved
dog,
up here to
right.
400 South Joanne, and Spike refused to live here. He
He
ran home every
didn't
day
like
and lived.
Didn't like this place.
Go back to the beach. He's a beach
So
dog.
Arnold Bonds, who was
Yeah,
in the
the
jewelry
wonderful
business, lived next door to us, and they sort of took him over because he wouldn't stay here.
They
They
liked
always
him. They
wanted
wanted
Spike anyway.
They took him.
And he moved towards Satakoy, and he said Spike
I
just
really
fought
didn't.
every dog he could find, and they had to put him to sleep.
Oh, he was mad. He needed the
He
beach.
was unhappy,
Yeah.
and he loved them too. He loved the Bonds, but he was.
Spike the beach dog.
And we,
Okay.
Okay, here's graduation time.
These are all shots down at the beach house in Kingston.
Yeah, this is graduation day, and Phyllis graduated from the 10th grade, which we had 10th grade graduation then instead of 12th because we had the junior college.
Little different.
And then here is Dawn,
At the 12th grade.
12th grade, same
Yeah,
day.
That's a good picture.
And I loved those graduation pictures, and they were just so excited about life there. And this
Spiffy
Dawn,
dresser there, wasn't he?
oh,
Grandpa, you really put on some threads.
yeah, I
What
had
we
to
doing
have
now,
men
yeah.
that had good threads.
And then
That meant a lot. And here's graduation.
more graduation photos.
Aren't
That's a pretty
those
one,
all
Mom.
good ones?
Yeah.
Now this one, well, they're all the same. And we still have most of these girls faithful to us to the end. And then,
Okay.
Very
Good.
good.
all right, we had now moved sold the beach house and moved here in 1953.
And this is the shot of you and
Yes.
Mom out in the backyard.
Yeah, sitting on the patio steps, we were still trying to get everything together
Yeah,
here.
it's a pretty picture.
And
of
this
her.
is Phyllis in her
She
Ventura
would've-
College days, I'd say here.
She was about 19.
Yeah, about 19. She went 1 year at Ventura College.
There's
and
Larry
then
out in the
went to-
backyard before all the big trees were there.
Yeah, he's just a little guy yet.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Christina and I in San Francisco. This is a good picture of,
Spiffy dresser
yeah,
fell there.
Philip to San Francisco.
What a dude.
Yeah, and this is Christina.
And then this is the family reunion you had in 1955.
And I believe it was 55.
Mm-hmm.
No, it must have been 56 because Donnie was married already.
Okay, and that's Donnie's wife, right?
Ansa.
And that's Larry,
Well,
That's Roscoe.
Roscoe.
and Aunt Mildred, and who's that?
Aunt Ethel.
Who's that?
Grandma Zing.
Oh, that's your mom.
Gertrude Johnson
Okay.
Zing.
And this is you and Grandpa, and that's Mom. And
Clark. Brother Clark.
no, that's
right?
your brother Clark.
No.
And then that's Ken and
Ken.
Helen. And then who's that?
Margie.
Oh, that's
Sister
Margie. Okay, I don't know if I ever met Margie.
Probably you have.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
this is all sort of the
Yeah,
same.
the same crowd down here.
Same time.
And then this is a good photo we wanted to show you of Uncle Don's wedding, which was just before this. They got married in
Yes.
1955. And that's, look at how
Larry,
Larry
look how
is.
little he is.
Yeah.
Erect.
Yeah. Okay.
Phyllis done in.
All right.
That was a nice little wedding.
Okay. That's
Oh,
it.
here we have to honor Philip on the way too. Here.
Oh, I'm sorry, honey. I didn't know you.
Or you. Yeah.
Let the young folks take over.
And there's Philip being honored for some.
Good.
Can you say anything about this,
Do you
Philip?
know what that photo is?
I don't know, I haven't seen it.
Can you get up here?
Yeah, there's something going on there.
Just one-
So this is the Brug family legacy now, after all this work. And what do we have here?
Well, this is my mom and dad's wedding. And they were married in 1957?
8. I think.
58.
8?
Okay.
Oh, she graduated college. Was it 59? What year were you born?
Well, Elizabeth was born in 59, yeah.
59.
Is there-
58.
Okay.
I think it would be.
Yeah.
Your mom and dad were quite young.
And up here, there's another wedding.
Yeah, there's Larry and Linda's wedding, and I remember that one. That was in 70.
You little yourself.
What was that? When did they get married?
1977.
1977. Yeah, I remember. I took that picture of.
Did you?
That was at the Colonial House in Oxnard. That's Elizabeth and Meredith having champagne for the first time, I think.
Oh,
At least they told us.
Oh, that's good.
And
That was
then
their story, huh?
Alex came along.
And then
Now let's see.
this
Larry
family
and
was
Linda.
busy.
And where's Andrew?
And then there's Lauren came along. Here's a good picture of all the grandkids right here.
Yeah, isn't that
That's a
wonderful?
baby Lauren and Alex, Mare, Elizabeth, and me.
The whole gang.
Uh-huh.
And here's a picture of Mom. How old was she there?
Well, she was graduating from college there.
Beautiful picture.
Isn't that beautiful? That
Here's
really-
That's
that
at
is
Grandpa's
Philip's
birthday.
80th
I guess
birthday.
that was my birthday.
80th birthday. That was because coming up on your 87th birthday in next Friday.
And
This
Lily
is
Lauren, who was 2.
January
Donnie
19th.
and June.
Johnny and June, and look at this, if that isn't little Lucy right there,
Yeah, it's not
take a
cute.
look. Little Lucy looked like that.
And there's old, that's about when they were in high school?
Yeah,
Or
that's their high
That's
school
nice.
and college,
Mhm.
Donnie's. And there's
And then the
Andrew.
Connie
We don't have to show that
There-
graduation.
Meredith.
There's all
Andrew
three
and
graduations.
Meredith, who's now mother of twins, the
Isn't
gals.
Isn't that?
Yeah.
There's all three guys. This is graduations of all three.
Mhm.
There's
Of the
frizzy haired Andy. Woo woo.
That was a
Woo-woo.
bad senior photo.
Oh, that was senior photo.
And beautiful Liz.
Here's some good ones. There's another good one of Larry and Linda's
That's
wedding.
awfully good.
Yeah.
Oh, got a little bit of glare here. Oh,
And
they're
look at
happy
little
couple.
Andrew next door. Isn't that?
And that's mom holding me.
Me, yeah.
Yeah.
That is something. And
1964.
there's Donnie with the 2 kids on the
Yeah.
side.
We
That's
used to.
Ruth, isn't it, right there?
Yeah, that's Grandma
Ruth at high
Ruth.
school graduation time.
Donnie with the 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Those chicks.
Oh,
Still drinking
Those
champagne.
crazy partying chicks.
And that's me and Meredith with Uncle Don.
yeah.
And then the grandparents.
They
Yeah.
always were sitting on his
And that's
chair.
Grandma's mom and dad's wedding
That's the
photo.
wedding
We saw
picture.
that earlier.
Great. And in the study, there are some pictures of Phyllis in her modeling days. Beautiful picture. And then baby Andrew. Woo-woo.
That's Lauren and Alex.
Some of the latest acquisitions here in the family are Roger the Turd
Uh-huh.
Lucy
and
Craco.
Wild Girl Lucy.
Yeah, she's now
And
at this stage.
somewhere we should have some pictures of the twins,
Here's a little picture.
Jane and Elizabeth.
Did you, was that on tape?
Whoops, we mean Jane and Emily.
Yeah.
Jane, Elizabeth, and Emily Laura right,
That's right.
here.
Now, do we want to?
This is their first Santa's visit.
Oh, I'm in the way.
And then
There
that's
it
over
is.
Thanksgiving.
Proud
So-
Papa Jim.
We've kind of covered.
And here's Larry
Larry.
with his 2 great
Look at that
kids.
doll of a little Lauren. I hope I'm still
Alex
on
has
it.
got a great smile there.
yeah.
Very nice.
And that's when little Lori was about 2.
Who's this guy?
I don't know. This is, of course, we have to get in Papa Jim Koenig, who had a little part in this family development
He
too.
was responsible for what?
He did what? He came and stole your girl away, Ruth?
On the patio. I have that someplace.
What a
And I said,
shyster.
"He's begging us for our daughter right out there in that corner." It's Don's dream of a lifetime to build a sailboat. And he just stuck with it, and he finally did it. He had about 6 other buddies that were all talking boats all the time, and that they were going to sail around the world each. And anyway, it ended up that no one kept their idea and accomplished it but Don. The rest of them, one at a time, got married and fell off the interest, you know. Don stuck to his, and in 1955, well, I might say sadly, the marriage broke up, partly probably because of this boat.
His obsession with the boat.
It was so time-consuming.
Can only be married to one lady at a time.
Uh-huh, right, and she was called the mistress. This boat is called the mistress.
Didn't Grandpa
Which are
carve
symbolic.
the
And this is
Yeah,
the
I got
figurehead.
the figurehead of the boat?
Uh-huh,
It's in
and
here
this
right
is
now.
actually
We'll go show it. Yeah.
a picture of his loading this boat to go around the world.
And he sailed around the world in what year?
He started,
Don was about 21, wasn't
about 26 at this time, 26.
26.
He'd been
So it was in 50.
sailing around with other boats, crewing and so before. Now, I used to know these dates so well now, they're sort of faded.
Well, it was in the mid 50s.
This was a snapshot, and Phyllis took the snapshot and painted this wonderful picture.
Yeah, she's a very talented artist.
She was
Painter,
talented, and
yeah.
that's exactly like the Santa Barbara sky, a little overcast,
Mm.
and we all, 64 right here, she painted it. So this was the trip that he sailed by himself, left Tahiti to go to New Zealand, alone. Well, it's very hard to go alone because you need somebody on watch 24 hours a day. But he sailed, and he eventually was so exhausted that he unthinkingly fell asleep, and the boat started drifting towards shore. And of
Oh,
course,
the last little island.
Uh-huh.
Just a little island in there, huh? South Pacific.
Just this
No, this
unknown
was-
little island, yes, that's right.
in New Zealand.
Oh, this is New Zealand.
And so the people could tell that that boat didn't have anyone in there, or they would have been going the other direction instead of coming right into the beach. Well, it just barely touched the bottom, and he was awake, and these people were all watching it happen. They ran out there to help rescue his boat, and it wasn't damaged, but they had to wait for the tide to go. They pushed when the tide was going out and got him off of that. It really didn't damage it, but it could have been the end of his
Got very lucky.
career in the boats.
Great picture.
I'm sure you slept very well the whole time he was out on.
Oh, then he came back to Ventura eventually. He shipped his boat back to New York Harbor.
Huh.
You gotta get really in there, like stand right.
3, huh? Well, this hobby started because Philip had a session in about 1944 where he had to lay off work. During World War II, civilians had to work pretty hard to keep things going, and he was at the Navy base, Port Juanita. So the doctor advised him to take off half a year, whatever's necessary to get him back to health. It was high blood pressure and heart problems,
But
and
the
so to entertain himself, and he stayed with the children, and I went to work during that time. And so he got to finding something to amuse himself at the Pierpont Bay Beach House, and he started carving just to see what he could do with his son.
I carved before that, but not stuff
Yeah,
like this.
not seriously. And I think this is one of your earliest pieces, the saddle horse here.
That's one of the earlier,
Mhm.
yes.
And then, one at a time, these came along. He kept looking for pictures that would be suitable for carving. And he did this for several years as a hobby. And I think he carved up until,
And those are his 3 children.
and yes,
Those are the 3 children.
and this was
Donnie, your
Dawn at
mother,
about
and-
13,
and Larry.
Phyllis at about 11, and then Larry
And
came
Larry, there
along.
was quite a gap.
And so this was all, he was invited to show it at the art show in Oxnard. It was probably 1947.
Oh, you want me?
You're the artist.
You did it.
And he took first prize at the art show in Oxnard over
That's
all
great.
categories.
That's
Imagine.
great.
All right.
I should have pushed
And
it a little more, I guess. than I
Women
did.
would come up to us and we said, she said, we recognized this little girl in the crowd was your mother by the carving.
That's amazing.
That's great.
And so it just went on, and I think probably your last piece was, he started,
It's the beginning of fame.
Well, he did one of me, I remember. I think that
Yeah,
went
I think I gave it
high
to you.
school.
You have it.
Yeah, we have it at our house.
It's in our house.
you should have it.
Mhm.
So
So
he
you-
did all 3 of the children.
Right, and he did all of us too.
And
By,
he did
by the
Andrew.
way, this is Johnny complaining of my parents. Excuse me.
Yeah, this is,
Right here, those
You
two,
want me to
those
put
two
up
that
and show
joined,
you?
Those are your parents?
those are the parents.
then he carved the
Beautiful.
carving of his dad and his mother. And that's probably one of the more recent, and he hasn't
That's one
carved
of the
probably
more
for
recent.
5, 6, 7 years now.
Now,
so-
I've gotten a little bit
Right.
too shaky.
Wonderful talent.
This happens to be all orchids. I got into orchids sort of by accident, and I have enjoyed it. They aren't in bloom yet. They have ready to open maybe in a month.
Helen said something that should be growing.
What's this back in the
Yeah,
corner?
let's talk about the buggy. We wanted to give you a little tour of the backyard
It's
here.
about to collapse.
Where did you get that?
Up in the mountains, I was trying to locate what it was. And the current river, you know where the current
Lake
river is?
Kachuma.
And did you buy it just for your backyard to have a, like a
Yeah,
ornamental
that's right.
piece?
Yes.
Well, he knew the people well.
And we
Oh,
tore
yeah.
it apart and brought it
Let me
back
get out of the way.
in our pickup truck. We tore it apart And
So we
brought-
took all the wheels off and we hauled it back.
Yeah.
We
and-
had a camper.
But it's gone now. It's just about disintegrated.
It's starting
It's
to
just
go.
about,
Yeah,
it's going
starting
to
to
be.
go
And
now.
I remember there used to be a huge, huge tree here that you cut down. I used to climb in it when I was little.
It was, got
Yeah.
a little bit too big.
It got too huge.
And you've got a huge pine tree that I'll just pick up. So this is a big, huge pine tree in the back.
That is big. We planted
It's
it the day we
big.
moved in here.
It should, I want you to show the bottles up here that Grandpa collected all these bottles from digging around California, all over
Mostly
Nevada.
California.
all over the place, and you put them up on this grate up here on
Did you
their
ever look underneath?
overhang, and they turn purple. They get this beautiful color
Yeah, you
purple.
can see them.
Oh,
zoom
yeah.
And they're just
Anything that'll turn I had up.
antique bottles up there, still turning purple and green. You can see some of the jars up there that are turning green with all.
Who was it
Yeah.
I talked to lately could shoot up?
Roger called, and he wants the bottles.
Yeah, no, those bottles are great. We have some in our house.
He
so.
just called our house.
He wants more for his office, huh?
Yeah,
He
he's
likes it.
enlarging
Anyway,
that
what do you
place.
say we head out around Ventura and show some of the houses that you've lived in your life here?
Sounds great.
Okay,
All
well, let's get in
right.
the car. One. This is Aunt Mildred's house that she lived for how many years, Grandma?
26 years, her entire time in California, she lived in this little house.
376 Jones Street. It's
That's right.
about a half a mile from where you live.
That's
That's
right.
right.
Yeah.
And it has been sold
Mhm.
to a young couple here, and I have to go by every few days. It just reminds me of Mildred. I spent a lot of time
Yeah.
in that house with her.
It was a neat house.
And I
It's a
built
neat
a
little
two-bedroom Spanish,
Mhm.
Spanish design.
and hope
What
these
is it
young
most
people are
popular?
happy with it.
I think they've taken good care of it. It looks like. to me.
Looks like they
Yeah.
took good care of the yard.
Everything's the same. Same
Okay.
drapes, same everything. Nothing has changed. Not a thing.
Well, now we're going to head down to the Channel Drive house that you lived in for a year, right when you moved to Ventura, and then before you moved up to Santa Barbara, right?
Yes.
Okay, we'll meet
Actually,
you
there's
over
two
there.
Okay. I came here to apply for a place to live after everybody else turned us down. And this lady lived upstairs. She was the manager, and I was so flattered to think that I asked her about renting here, and she said, we don't take children here because she says there's just no place and they upset other people. And she said, we talked a few minutes, and she said, you know, I'm looking at you and I think you'd be pretty good. Take care of your children. And she said, I want to take a chance on you. Isn't that something?
And
The
this-
room had been empty for quite a while.
This is what year?
Really is having trouble with
1939.
children.
1939. You moved into the lower right-hand corner one.
Yes. And so,
It was 2192 Channel Drive,
yeah,
huh?
and they have children I see running in and
Yeah,
out
it's
there
still
now.
still being occupied.
But they have changed their views about children today.
Mhm.
And it was a big,
Quite a
nice
little.
big apartment. But you know, we lived there just a year, and it was so cold. See, that never gets any sun. No
And-
sunlight
And,
whatsoever.
and you had the train right behind you, didn't you?
Yes,
Yeah,
but you
train
know,
ride,
I used,
railroad
every
ride.
time I heard the train coming, I'd run outside to make sure that Lauren or Donnie wasn't on the railroad track.
Yeah, that's
I
scary.
just couldn't help it. I just so afraid, but we did have a lot. It was Depression days and a lot of
Mhm.
bums, hobos, that
Helen
came
Smith
to the
and
back.
her husband lived on this street.
Yeah.
And our friends.
Yeah, Slabiscus, all of us. And they have maintained this building very nicely.
So you moved here from Alameda, California. Lived here a year in '39, then moved up to Santa Barbara.
Yes.
And you stayed up there for a
Roughly.
year.
Well, I'll take that lot. We went to Wyoming thinking we may not ever come back.
Yeah, we were a little undecided
I
about
guess we
that.
recorded. So we we moved to Wyoming and spent almost the whole summer thinking we may not.
What
come
year
back.
was that?
That would be about 19, well, we came back and they announced that the war was on. So it was 1941 or so. It was
So-
about 7 years before we went.
You moved from Alameda to here to Wyoming or Santa Barbara?
To Wyoming.
Oh.
I didn't move, we just went to see how
temporarily.
we'd like it.
And then from Wyoming back to Santa Barbara.
To Ventura and then Santa Barbara in a very short period of time.
Oh, so okay.
And we stayed up there a year or so, and
All
World
right.
War II started. And we moved in here to 406.
406.
After leaving Channel Drive House, it was so cold and clammy because it faced too much to the north side that there was just no sun there.
This is 406 San Clemente on the corner of Ocean and San Clemente.
San Clemente,
Right.
right. And Phyllis went to kindergarten from here. The bus stop was
That's where she started.
So you went from Channel Drive, moved to Wyoming for 3 months just to see if you liked it, and you didn't like it. You came back and lived here for just a few months,
yes.
and then you moved to Santa Barbara.
Then we
That's
moved
right,
to San.
yeah.
And,
Okay.
yes,
That's right.
And then you came from Santa Barbara down to the Kingston
to
house.
Kingston Lane.
Okay, well let's head down to the Kingston house and show that.
All right.
House and everything
Head down
was
to
not
Kingston
here.
house.
It was not here.
Yeah.
It was country, swampy little.
So this Seward Avenue wasn't nearly like this, was it?
Oh,
It was a little too
entirely
mean.
different.
Yeah.
Entirely different.
And this was rocked on the bottom, way below this freeway, and we climbed that hill. Everybody walked uptown.
You can't really see the ocean
That's when
from
there
here,
wasn't
but
any gasoline available.
yeah. Well, we'll see.
And the
What was right here, Graham?
right here in this asphalt
Was what?
riding stable.
And that's where Mom.
She
And
liked
she
the
hung
house
out
back right.
in her teen years. She decided to get into horses. The girls down here did. And
Pretty
those-
horsey.
This is Seward and
and
Pierpont.
that old man owned those horses. He was so good to the children. And they worked for him, you know.
Now it's a.
They worked for him free to get to ride the horses.
Is that right? Now it's a. It used to be a gas station when I was born. Now they tore that down.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And they cleaned the stalls for him, you know, and he'd let him ride.
I didn't know Mom was that much of a horse rider.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
She loved it.
Well, you know, you go through stages, you know.
Kingston
you go
is
through this stage
two
and then
down.
that stage. Now, Kingston is right.
Yeah,
across
coming
here.
down Pierpont, and you take a ride here
Oh,
on
there's an organ or something for sale right there in the front yard.
Kingston Lane. Oh well. Yeah. And just right down here on the right.
Empty lots, and that's where he
Oh,
built the
oh,
boat.
right here, honey.
We're down
And
there.
this one
was
right
our
here.
Yeah, it looks entirely different now.
Yeah, that's
This is where Don built his boat.
that's
This
it.
house,
Well,
right?
let's get out here. What do you say? Okay, well, we're at the Kingston house, and it's 1157 Kingston Lane. And what do you want to say about this house, Graham?
Well, we lived here 12 years,
We owned this place
Yeah.
one time.
and Larry was born here. I mean, this is where we lived when Larry was born in 1945.
Where this big house is, it was empty lot.
It's all empty.
What were you saying about the garage, Phil, that you added this section on?
Yeah, we had a pony, it was too long, that much too long.
Your car was too long for the garage, so you bumped it out a little bit.
We
That
bought a
works.
1948 Pontiac, and it wouldn't fit in that garage because cars were smaller.
You know that little extension you got? I built that.
That's so we could get into the garage.
Still, the
Younger.
workmanship, fine workmanship, still being used, Graham.
And the upstairs.
Some surprise is still there.
Yeah,
it sure
show
looks
the upstairs up here.
Yeah,
This extension
that
upstairs.
was the main.
Grandpa, you built that?
Yeah, we built
For what?
upstairs.
it. Just it made upstairs there.
But wasn't that a bedroom or something?
Wasn't it
No.
Donnie's bedroom?
Oh,
No, it was just, it was nothing.
it was I thought you said it was Donnie's bedroom up there. Ended up being.
Yeah, it ended up that
Oh, ended
after
up
I
being.
built it.
Oh, okay.
But before I built it was nothing, it was just roof.
Very cute house.
And then we owned this lot at the same time. We owned this lot.
The first pool was right here,
Oh yeah.
and they had one line leading right over to the
right.
then lot, empty lot.
Excellent.
Don built the boat right in there, so.
Ruth's wheeling and dealing.
Okay.
This is the kitchen
Wait,
here?
Graham. Okay.
Oh,
Go ahead. That's all right. We're following you.
This is the kitchen here.
this is the little dinette room. Very small, but it's cute. Maybe it's remodeled by now. It sort of looks like it.
There's the upstairs addition.
And this is a living room window. And this is a living room window. Oh, they have new windows.
Pretty windows. Yeah.
We used to have the ones that turned out with the metal handles, you know. Isn't this cute?
And
It's
this used to
nice-
be the front yard then.
This is the front yard. Didn't look like this one really up here, did it? Andy?
It's pretty.
This used to be the front, huh?
This would be the front, but in England. you see
Ooh,
the
yeah,
front
made it
door
nice.
with the
Yeah,
surface
it's
like
got
that.
nice.
And it's cute around here, and a nice fireplace.
There's a fireplace. Yeah.
Yeah,
They have a little fish pond here.
Yeah.
That was
yeah, it was nice.
It's so cute.
That's true.
You know, That's what we need to get at. There's some of this little
Reed thing.
trees,
Here's a cute little window. Is this the living room window
This
here?
is the
The
bedroom.
bed,
Oh, that's a bedroom.
the main
This is all
bedroom.
living
That
room.
was all.
So this was the front door?
Yeah, that's
This is
right.
the front entrance. And see, this was,
Come
you
around,
walked
show
in,
it.
you walked in front. It's a sidewalk out
Yeah,
in
the
front.
fireplace was ahead of time, that's right.
No
This was
need.
the front door.
And it had nice hardwood floors.
So the front door is right next to your bedroom.
Right next to the
Yeah, that's our living room with a hall, and here's our living room.
This hall.
Now, these are the original windows.
It's a very cute house.
Yeah, it is, it
You want to
is.
ahead of me, do you? I'm getting about
Too bad you
No, no, no,
sold
you go
it.
on
Boy,
ahead.
we would have loved to still
This
have
is a cute house. Very charming.
He didn't want to move here, Donnie, huh?
He didn't want to leave it. He loved it. He loved it.
He said, you know, I think I've been in a lot of houses in it, but I think we have the nicest house in Ventura.
Well, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Huh.
Now, this was,
Yeah, Don loved it.
this was the entrance to the big kitchen.
Oh, this led
And
to
they
the
changed
kitchen?
the door.
Huh.
Yeah, that's the kitchen
That's the
entrance.
kitchen to
And this was the only house on the street, pretty much, wasn't it?
Pretty much.
There's
There
just a
was
Pretty much so.
there was a house
Very few
before
houses
on this street.
at that time.
Nothing here. Stella's house is that big, well, we wouldn't recognize it in theirs. Those two were there.
You see the length of
And
it?
original houses are
Extension's
very
pretty solid, Grandpa.
That's pretty.
Fine
Sure, Bill, no,
craftsmanship.
that's pretty good. That's a long time ago.
And then the beach is just down this lane
Down
here.
that
So
lane.
you were right down the beach.
That's right.
I couldn't see the
We
beach.
were right on the beach.
But
That's
your
right.
mother spent her every waking moment down there. on the
I think your mother would.
Well, we should head down to the Sagamore Lane house and show you where I was born.
That's next.
What do you say we head down there? Just real quick.
All right.
Right.
There's a shot of the Kingston Lane town I was trying before. Now we're going to head down that way a few blocks to Sagamore Lane where Mom and Dad had their first house together after they were married.
With a bunch of temporary buildings.
Yeah, there's
sitting on
Pierpont School where Mary and Liz went to kindergarten and first grade. And it was just 2 blocks down from Sagamore Lane here.
That was really something, wasn't it? To go have that house, that school so full.
Yeah.
Andrew, you did not go there.
I went there just half a 3rd grade when we came back from Camarillo.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. And then slow down. It's right here, right?
You got the little gray house.
1242, right here. Yeah, they painted it gray.
It sure is.
I remember playing baseball in that little driveway.
It's bigger than it looks now.
Well, I'll get it.
Well, Andrew here was born at this house. Can you believe it? This was the house that Jim built before Phyllis and Jim were married. The time they got married, they moved right into this little house. And it's just so charming inside. It looks small, but it's much bigger. They added a nice,
That's 3 kids in
this house,
Yeah.
3 children.
a nice playhouse in the back. We had a bunny rabbit. I remember our Falcon station wagon always being parked right here. Remember that big white Falcon station wagon?
And it was just a wonderful place to raise children.
Marty Densborough lived right down here, and we used to play baseball in this driveway here.
It was this very special little house inside, really, really is.
Dad had that built, but right before they got married, right?
Yeah, right.
So
They
Mom
got
would have a
married and
place to
moved in
move
there.
into.
Yeah, it was so nice. They were he was in the planning stage when they met,
Great.
ready to.
So that would be about 58. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, that kind of does the beach area, and we'll just head back up to the house on Joanne and have a few closing words of the Ruth and Phil This Is Your Life video.
Yeah, that's a good
That's
name of
right.
that program.
That's right.
Excellent.
This is your
So
life.
we'll see you back up the homestead.
All right.
Okay, coming back down Preble, and there's the house, corner of South Joanne and Preble. So we're just gonna set up a final shot in the driveway.
He's talking.
Come on in, Gwen. We gotta have you in here too.
Yeah, this is for all four. Hunch together here. Is it noise on?
It's on. You're ready on, Graham.
Okay.
What do you want to say in closing in our final shot of the This Is Your Life Ruth and Phil video?
That's a good idea. Well, it is great to think that we can preserve these old traditions and so forth of our great grandchildren and see what we look like.
I couldn't do that for my
27. Yeah.
So we wanted Alex and Lauren and Lucy and Roger and Jane and Emily and whatever kids Gwen and I have to know these great people.
Yeah, this is
That's
a
right.
fun outfit, I'm telling you. Gwen and Andrew
Good day. Good day.
We wanted you all to know the Brug and Zing family history for all the future Zing, Brugs, Krakos,
Ponies.
Konigs, all of the future Tulls, everybody.
You know, it gets pretty big.
It's a big family now, so we wanted to make sure everybody knew where their roots were from.
That's right. Every time somebody
So-
gets married, there's another family.
Yeah.
Persons.
Do you have anything you want to say to the folks out there at TV Lounge, Grandpa?
You said it all